So I was planning to focus on how these two articles about research apply to sustainability and socioeconomic issues. And within the first article, the multi-method approach by Summer and Summer, I think the part where they mention that the National Weather Service always uses psychologists was really interesting. I think that when we're reporting socioeconomic issues and issues related to the environment, we may need some psychologists on board because a lot of people tend to react poorly to that information. People like Bush, who limited our sustainable movement to the borders outside of the U.S. Anyway, one of the things that most interesting in the multi-method approach article by Summer and Sumner I thought was the action research method. On page 5, he or she, they both describe this as a means by which behavior scientists could contribute simultaneously to theory and practice. I think that that would be my preferred method of research, given that they're reducing the distance between the researchers and the public, is how they describe it. And I feel that that is a very approachable way to solve a problem. With public achievement and the Institute for Citizenship and Social Responsibility, we are kind of doing that in a sense. We're going into these classrooms and talking about citizenship with our students and having them solve issues for themselves and discuss the problem even as young people, which sometimes we don't do in the States. But anyway, I feel that that was kind of an application of action research. We're studying what these students want to see a difference, or what these students want to see different, and what issues they want to approach, and what is important to them, but at the same rate we're involved in actually making that change as well, which may be something that's a little further than research, but I thought the action research method was really interesting. So basic methods: observation, experiment, questionnaire, and interview. Those seem kind of elementary in research methods, but it's always nice to remind yourself of how to properly research. I think sometimes I get off on a track and I lose my way a little bit. On page 6 of the Summer article, I did have a good laugh because I was scanning the chart and it says test people in laboratory, watch them. I had to laugh about that because if someone were just flipping through the pages like I was that day, that would really catch someone off guard. I read the whole article, mind you, but I did flip through the table. I wasn't reading it word for word, and that caught me off guard. Kind of funny. So I think both of these articles are essentially focusing on how we should apply our research methods. I thought on page 8 of this article, where they're talking about human behavior and how to learn techniques and how to learn a range of techniques and what should be involved in research. They say to understand why people act as they do, one cannot view our actions solely in psychological terms, economic terms, or historical terms. And I think that is really important to remember when we're doing our research. That there's not one set discipline among any of us, and that we do kind of have this overarching goal to find, sustainable assets or sustainable means, and we have to keep in mind to keep all of our disciplines in mind. So I thought the section on general laws and local conditions was also really interesting. They compared Rio de Janeiro to Cleveland, and they were doing a research project on homelessness, right? And I thought that was really interesting to keep in mind the local conditions. I think that's something we tend to fail to think about sometimes. But obviously homelessness in Bowling Green, Kentucky versus homelessness in Detroit, it's going to be a completely drastically different, research paper. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. So I kind of like that they reminded us of that. This reading wasn't as exciting as our past reading, but obviously important. And there was a section on page 10 where they talk about thinking, what it was they say, act locally and think globally. So even if you don't have the means to change a whole socioeconomic issue, we should at least participate in that mind frame. And the practical experience section was really interesting as well. To acquire skill in using the questionnaire as a research tool requires something more experience. And I think here they also kind of set the idea that, you know, research is an art form. We need to approach it in that manner, and the only way to become truly skilled in an art is to practice it. And I think that's something else they're saying here is research is something that really gets better throughout time, and as often as we do it and the more we practice it, the better we will get. The community psychology piece, the foundations of community research, I thought this was really interesting because I felt like this really applied to us, because essentially this research method about community research is always keeping in the back of our minds to facilitate the achievement of the goals of those people that we are trying to assist in their community. So it's not necessarily that we continually need to press our own mind frames on them, or that we don't need to press our own ideals, but we do need to assist those people who need assistance in their community, and we need to keep their goals in mind, not necessarily ours, but theirs. And I think that's something White's article could have touched on a little bit more. I feel like he could have done a questionnaire, an interview with the people in the situation, or he could have included more historical research. White's article was great as a basis, but I think for the particular issue, that being environmental hazards in the food, water, air, and in the living space in these socioeconomic areas, I think that he could have included some of these research methods that we touch on in all of these, in both of these readings this week. So that wasn't great, but again, I feel that the purpose of these readings was to give us an idea of how to create sustainable communities through research, and to give us a fundamental, or to give us a foundation for future research projects. Okay, thanks. Bye.